Welcome classic rock fans and welcome patrons to an episode of Beneath the Covers, and today we're looking at the album Newborn by the James Gang. Now, the James Gang hail from Cleveland, Ohio, and I suppose the most iconic member is Joe Walsh, who left his former band the Measles to join the James Gang. They also boasted having Tommy Bolin as a member at one point. Of course, Joe Walsh would leave the James Gang in about 73, I think it's 73, 74, not sure with my exact dates, but to bolster and give some added guitar clout to the Eagles, who were flailing a little bit after, I think, the commercial disaster of their Desperado album. I mean, their first two albums are just fine albums. Your Album and James Gang Rides Again, released in 1970. And they opened for numerous, classic rock heavyweights, including Led Zeppelin, including Cream, the Grand Funk Railroad, Kinks, Humble Pie, Three Dog Night, quite a few in fact. They even formed quite a close friendship with the who they would support on their US tour. And I think the Who actually brought the James Gang over to the UK. Pete Townsend actually, I think, cited Joe Walsh as one of the finest guitar players in America. Eventually Joe Walsh leaves after a couple of albums. I think he gets tired of being the only writer really in this band. Tommy Bolin joins, I think at the recommendation of Walsh, and does a fine job before leaving himself to eventually winding up in Deep Purple. But by early 1975, a new lineup of the James Gang is formed, and they decide to call their new record Newborn. It's their first record on the Atlantic label. I think it was the only record on the Atlantic label. It's probably well known because they do a interesting cover version of Elvis Presley's Heartbreak Hotel. But what is fascinating about this is the cover. Of course, they secure a license, I suppose, to use the image, the famous Salvador Dali painting, Geopolitica's child watching the birth of new man. But it's an interesting story in terms of how they had to acquire the license. They actually had a meeting with Salvador Dali in a hotel lobby, and the rest of the story is related rather amusingly by the drummer Jimmy Fox. He states that the original Dali Museum was in a Cleveland suburb called Beechwood, Ohio, before moving to Florida. They were having a major exhibition, and the band went to have a look around because they were totally enamoured, I think, with Dali's work. I think all that surrealist art very much came to vogue, certainly by the late 60s, and it's still very much apparent in the early 70s. But obviously they wanted to see if they could secure the rights to use the painting for Geopoliticus and the Geopoliticus child and the birth of the new man. The whole idea, according to Jimmy Fox, is that they felt that the band were in an interesting transition. The band were going for a kind of a new birth in themselves, and felt that this was an incredibly appropriate piece of artwork. So the band being reborn was more from a personal perspective than a political or commercial one, I think. However, through the management, they managed to set up a meeting with Salvador Dali that took place in the lobby of a hotel in New York. So they flew to New York, and they were informed by Dali's wife that this meeting would actually take place in the King Cole lounge of the lobby of the hotel. He describes the scene as rather appropriately being quite surreal in itself, with Dali sat there deliberately trying to trip people up with his cane as they walked by. He goes on to say, if I may quote, "Before I could approach him, he got up and went into the bar. There was a table prepared for him. There was a line of people waiting for their allotted time with Dali. When my turn came, I was ushered to the table where he greeted me warmly in Spanish. I sat down and explained to him that I wanted to use the artwork for one of our albums. He immediately said no. So apparently he flew home with his tail between his legs. Later he found out that he was refused because he didn't offer cash or hard cash, which is what Dali wanted. So it had to be sorted out through the management. They got the management to phone his management, and it was all arranged eventually. It's an interesting painting, of course. He's got the man scrambling after the egg. The egg is quite a prominent symbol in Dali's work, but you can easily see how it was pertinent to the James Gang at this point in their history. I must admit, in terms of the James Gang, I tend to focus on the two albums that feature Joe Walsh. I don't tend to tread beyond those, really. Maybe I should, I don't know. And I hope you enjoyed my little narrative about the James Gang and the album cover Newborn. You've been watching an episode of Beneath the Covers. I hope you're well, staying warm, looking forward to Christmas, but more importantly that you keep listening.